Today, we're getting into the life and times of the one and only Mr. Frederick Douglass.
Frederick Douglass wasn't born with that name. At birth, he was christened Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. The date he was born has been lost to history. He said, "I have no accurate knowledge of my age, never having seen any authentic record containing it."
Born a slave, Douglass never knew the exact date of his birth.
In fact, he states that he never knew a slave that could tell him their actual age.
To have ever met a slave who could tell his birthday. They seldom come nearer to it than planting time, harvest time, cherry time, springtime, or fall time. I have determined that I was born sometime in February in the year 1870.
Keeping the slave ignorant was one of the primary goals of the masters.
My mother was named Harriet Bailey, and she was a slave. She was of a very dark complexion. Of my father, I know nothing.
But Douglass never really got to know his mother. It was common for infants born to slaves to be separated from their mothers soon after birth. So Douglass, like many slaves, he grew up without his mother.
Slave owners often made a point of separating families. Breaking family bonds increased dependence on the slave owner.
The practice of separating children from their mother and hiring the latter out at distances too great to admit of their meeting.
I do not recollect ever seeing my mother by the light of day. She was with me in the night. She would lie down with me and get me to sleep, but long before I waked, she was gone. Once she walked 12 miles to see me and had the same distance to travel again before the morning sunrise.
Except at long intervals, is a marked feature of the cruelty and barbarity of the slave system, but it is in harmony with the grand aim of slavery, which, always and everywhere, is to reduce man to a level with the brute. It is a successful method of obliterating from the mind and heart of the slave all just ideas of the sacredness of the family as an institution. That the actions of the slave master were effective in producing the results of destroying the mind, mentality, and the makeup of the family. And this is something that he knew better than anyone else because this is what they did to him.
It was while he was at this farm that his mother died.
Death soon ended what little communication we had between us, and with it her hardships and suffering. She died when I was but 7 years old on one of my master's farms. I was not allowed to be present during her illness, at her death, or her burial.
He was sent to Baltimore to serve the family of Hugh Auld. His journey to literacy started when Sophia Auld, Hugh's wife, began teaching him the letters of the alphabet. And Hugh Auld did not like that his wife was doing so.
What was going on, and at once forbade Mrs. Auld to instruct me further, telling her, among other things, that it was unlawful as well as unsafe to teach a slave to read. It will forever unfit him to be a slave, he said. He will at once become unmanageable and of no value to his master. These words sank deep into my heart. From that moment, I understood the pathway from slavery to freedom.
Plus, all thought that if slaves could read and write, they would be more likely to want their freedom and more likely to seek it out.
Discipline was maintained through simple fear and destroying self-esteem.
Unfortunately, Sophia came around to her husband's way of thinking, and Douglass's tutoring sessions, they came to an end.
All of this and rebelled against it. As a teenager, he taught himself to read. This created a desire for freedom.
But Douglass believed that once you learn to read, you will be forever free. And so he kept learning.
When his owner discovered this disturbing development, he sent him to live with a local farmer, Edward Covey, who made extra money breaking the will of unruly slaves.
Douglass discussed a man named Edward Covey. Covey was what was known as a slave breaker, known for breaking unruly enslaved people who presented problems to the planters. And Covey was notoriously ruthless.
He writes of the beatings he sustained at Covey's hands. I had not been in his possession 3 whole days before he subjected me to a most brutal chastisement. Under his heavy blows, blood flowed freely, and wales were left on my back as large as my little finger. Sores on my back from this flogging continued for weeks, for they were kept open by the rough and coarse cloth which I wore for shirting.
In early 1833, Douglass was rented out to Covey, and for months was subjected to unrelenting abuse. Sometimes, after he had been whipped by Covey, the gashes he had from his previous beatings had not even healed yet.
He could be punished for not working hard enough, but also for working too hard, or even for suggesting labor-saving ideas. Douglass experienced all of this. Covey beat Douglass every week for 6 months, often for no reason. The dark night of slavery closed in upon me, he later wrote.
And this demonstrates how the slavery system dehumanized and desensitized the slaves.
That all changed one hot August day in 1835. When Covey struck him, Douglass fought back.
Mr. Covey seemed now to think he had me and could do what he pleased. But at this moment, from whence came the spirit, I don't know, I resolved to fight. And suiting my action to the resolution, I seized Covey hard by the throat, and as I did so, I rose. He held on to me, and I to him. We were at it for nearly 2 hours. Covey at length let me go. I considered him as getting entirely the worst end of the bargain, for he had drawn no blood from me, but I had from him. The whole 6 months afterwards that I spent with Mr. Covey, he never laid the weight of his finger upon me in anger.
Where he found the courage he couldn't say, the two men struggled until Covey stumbled away, exhausted.
Freedom, and revived within me a sense of my own manhood. It recalled the departed self-confidence and inspired me again with the determination to be free.
Covey never laid a hand on Douglass again. The teenage slave had stood up for himself.
The gratification afforded by the triumph was a full compensation for whatever else might follow, even death itself.
He considered this the most important lesson of his life.
He only can understand the deep satisfaction I experienced who has himself repelled by force the bloody arm of slavery. I felt as I never felt before. It was a glorious resurrection from the tomb of slavery to the heaven of freedom. My long-crushed spirit rose. Cowardice departed. Bold defiance took its place. And I now resolved that, however long I might remain a slave in form, the day had passed forever when I could be a slave in fact. I did not hesitate to let it be known of me that the white man who expected to succeed in whipping must also succeed in killing me.
Years later, he would tell this story. "You owe it to yourself," he said.